Good Monday morning, the day before St. Patrick's Day. Man, we're looking forward to the luck of the Irish with nicer weather for St. Patrick's Day.
Chilly.
Yeah,
but
chilly,
nicer.
But nicer. All right. This is Hunter Forst, meteorologist at 13 News Now. I am meteorologist Craig Muller. You found us here on the weather desk, and when we're both here, you got to think something's up. You're also going to hear from Jordy Clark a little bit later on, looking at travel impacts. That's something that's up. Severe weather.
Yeah, you know, we have the potential to see some strong to very severe storms, isolated tornadoes not out of the question, and a level 3 and 4 risk for us here.
Something we don't see very often. There's a lot to break down on that. I would go so far as to say, Hunter, we are absolutely going to see severe weather across the region. It's such a high threat level, and this thing's already had a history, the storm system, of producing severe weather out west. It's not a matter of if, but exactly when and where. Now, the question as to tornadoes, we have this level 3 and level 4 threat for tornadoes, and there's a lot to go over. So let's jump into our headlines here. We'll take a look at these, and we'll start off with the severe storms likely for the eastern U.S. With this tornado risk, Hunter, as I'm terming it, it's a very real risk, and there are some things people need to know.
Yeah, you know, we're under level 3 and 4 risk for severe weather. So that just translates to a fairly good odds of seeing, you know, isolated to scattered tornadoes. And it's not just for us here in Hampton Roads. It's for a large swath of Virginia down into North Carolina.
Basically that,
South
the Piedmont, of Virginia, North Carolina, this wide area, but it does push into the western parts of our viewing area.
Yeah, even all the way up into Washington, D.C., Maryland. So a lot of people under a big threat for severe weather today.
So in addition to covering that threat and showing you the area, and we've got an expanded edition of the weather desk. You know, normally we have a half an hour and we have it very tightly produced. In this case, we're going to dive into the radar. We're going to take a look. But there are things you need to know, like the difference between a watch and a warning. We'll be running through that. We'll be getting into what to do if you're caught outside in a tornado. What if you're driving? What if, you know, you're in a house? Should you go to a particular area? All those types of things we'll be running through that. In addition, we also are going to talk to Dominion Energy. You know, they're prepping for this system, this outbreak. And, you know, we were hearing from Dominion Energy earlier, it can take up to 8 hours sometimes to replace power poles. And when you've got a widespread wind event, which even if you don't get a tornado where you are, the likelihood of wind damage is tremendous today. I mean, especially in central Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, we have about, it's a 60% shot of seeing some really strong gusty winds up to 60, even 70 plus.
Yeah, that's 60% within 25 miles of any point across central Virginia, and for eastern Virginia, the chances are very great as well. So we do expect at least a wave and most likely a few waves of severe storms with these powerful gusts potentially coming through. We also have the impacts on travel, and you got to believe they're going to be significant.
Yeah, the good thing is this morning, at least around Hampton Roads, the morning commute wasn't too bad. But don't let that fool you, because later on, that's when it's really going to get dicey, heading into the afternoon and for your evening.
That evening commute, the timing on that, when we jump into the future cast, you're going to see we should see some pretty large storms. In addition, there are some other really wild stories from across the country. If we have time, we'll show you a skier that was rescued from some deep snow, went headfirst in. They dug him out, and the skier's okay. That was in Washington. And then heavy rain triggering Oregon landslides. There are some other stories from the Midwest as well. But we're going to jump in right now, and Hunter will step out real quick. We're going to jump into our tornado threat, and I want to break down the radar and get into that for you right now. So as we take a look, there is this elevated risk of tornadoes today. Be prepared. When we talk about tornado preparation and severe weather preparation, things have changed a little bit. You know, it used to be, hey, just have a few supplies stocked up, you know, keep a weather radio nearby, listen to your TV. All that stuff's very, very legit. But we now have these mobile devices, phones, tablets, other ways that we can get alerts. And one of the best things you can do is make sure all of your mobile devices are fully charged before severe weather hits, because there is that threat of losing power. Whether it's a tornado or straight line winds, we can have some outages today. So make sure you and your family are prepared. All right, we'll take a look at the satellite and the radar images. Let's take this full. I'm going to walk over to the pod where I can manipulate the radar a little bit. So let's take this graphic full, and you can see this big storm system rolling through the Great Lakes region. That's where the center of low pressure is. We have a new watch that is down to the south. So let's stop it right here. And I do want to put on our surface features. You can see that new watch down across Georgia and South Carolina. There's the front. So you see we've got this cold front out there, and this front right here, this thing is what's going to bring about our big changes. Today, we have winds coming up ahead of it from the south. That's really going to continue to create a very unstable atmosphere. And as we take a look here, we're going to see storms erupting as we go throughout the afternoon and into the early evening. This front is going to push through Hampton Roads. I think the frontal passage occurs between 8 and 10 o'clock here in the metro area. So it's going to take a while, but it's all of the development out ahead of it. That's what's got us really concerned. When this front comes through between 8 and 10, a lot of that energy will kind of be robbed already from the atmosphere. So we may actually catch a break when the actual front comes through. But out ahead of it, we're looking at several waves of potential severe weather, especially during the peak heating of the afternoon. So that is a big concern. Now, let me give you some more information here on the watch, and let's zoom in a little bit. We'll take you into the southeast U.S. You can see these areas outlined in magenta. These are all tornado watches, and there will be, I believe, tornado watches issued all the way to the coast as we go through the afternoon. I'm fairly certain of that. As a matter of fact, I am certain of it. You take a look right now. This is a new watch, and let me put the information on this for you so you can see what's going on here. We do have this tornado watch that will run until 2 o'clock this afternoon. Now, this was just recently issued. It includes the cities of Durham, Greensboro, Raleigh, Winston-Salem, also the cities of Danville, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Salem, and those counties there. You see a few of them out to the west, all the way down, again, through Raleigh, this area, some densely populated central portions of North Carolina. The Charlotte area has been under thunderstorm watch this morning, but they are also under a warning right now. So I'll go ahead and click on that and show you that thunderstorm warning for Charlotte. So down that way, almost 1 million people, 985,000 people under that right now. So you can see there is this potential for severe weather across western parts of North Carolina this morning and then into central Virginia and North Carolina as we push into the middle part of the afternoon. There is a thunderstorm warning there just out to the east of Roanoke. I'll highlight that one. This includes Danville, Forest, Lynchburg, Madison Heights, Buena Vista, Danville, Lexington, Lynchburg, some of the cities there, and about 224,000 or so under that thunderstorm warning as that area continues to work off to the east-northeast. So that's what's out there right now. Down to the south, we've seen some more intense storms, and the outlook for severe weather today, we are going to see widespread activity over portions of Virginia. I'm showing you this down to the south, and we'll very quickly take a look at the radar mosaic once again, just to give you a feel for all of the warnings that are out down to the south. Numerous thunderstorm warnings over portions of western North Carolina, South Carolina, down into Georgia, even the Florida Panhandle. You head down there not far from Panama City, Port St. Joe, and Carabel up through Tallahassee, now just past Tallahassee, some severe storms there. And then notice, cold enough for some snow on the backside. Hit something else. Look at Chicago. We got a little advisory up there. We'll pop that up just to show you that in Chicago. Obviously, densely populated. There's 10.3 million people under flood advisory there in Chicago, and now snow working down across Wisconsin. So this is a pretty amazing storm system, a large storm system that is wreaking havoc with much of the country, the eastern U.S., and it's going to continue to push closer to the coast. Now, as we take a look at our outlook, this is what I want to key on for Virginia and North Carolina. Let's come back out on camera here so you can see from this area, Washington down through Raleigh and Columbia. This is a level 4 threat. Now, we talk about this a lot. we have these various levels. Level 1, green, it's a marginal threat. Yeah, there could be a few isolated storms. It's a possibility we could see a few isolated severe storms. When you get into yellow, that's the second tier. That's what we call a slight risk. You expect scattered severe storms. And we see levels 1 and 2 pretty frequently during our spring storm season. We get those quite a bit. We get into this level 3 several times a year. Not a ton, but we do get up to that level 3, what we call an enhanced risk, where numerous severe storms are possible. I'd say a couple times a year anyway. The chances, though, of getting to this 4th level here in Hampton Roads and closer to the coast, this doesn't happen that frequently. Widespread severe storms are expected anywhere from Maryland and the D.C. area down through central and even eastern portions of Virginia, through central North Carolina, and all the way down to Columbia, South Carolina. So Florence, they're under it. You can see Raleigh, Rocky Mount, Charlotte again under level 3. But these communities here, all the way up through South Boston, Emporia, Franklin, Williamsburg, Tappahannock, Richmond, obviously Petersburg, Farmville, and up to D.C., all under this. And for the northern neck, parts of the Middle Peninsula, Gloucester and parts of Matthews under this level 4 threat. The western side of Newport News up towards Fort Eustis, you're under a level 4 threat for severe storms. Williamsburg, York, James City County areas off to the west. Isle of Wight basically divided. Eastern parts of Isle of Wight not under the level 4, under level 3. Level 4, though, for western areas down through Franklin, Southampton, Sussex, Surrey, and out towards Petersburg and Emporia. We mentioned that. Notice for Hampton Roads, this area here under a level 3 threat, and that in and of itself would be more than enough for us to say, hey, we've got a weather impact alert. We're anticipating severe storms. Be ready for that. Well, with the level 4 just sitting just out to the west over the western parts of our area, I mean, obviously this is a no-brainer. You absolutely do it. Up to the eastern shore, that threat continues, and down across northeast and eastern North Carolina, a level 3 threat. Now, what about the types of weather we could get? Tornado threat. Look at this potential. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So a level 4 threat for those inland areas. And that means within 25 miles of any point shaded in this red, you have a 15% chance of seeing a tornado. And the fact that we have these black hashes on this, you take a look at that, that means that there could be EF2 or greater tornadoes. Now, we do get occasional tornadoes in Hampton Roads, typically EF0s, EF1s. When we cover stories and there is more widespread tornado damages, a lot of times the Weather Service goes out and confirms we had an EF2 tornado, sometimes an EF3. I think the Great Neck tornado verified is an EF3, if I'm remembering correctly. Those are the types of tornadoes. I remember covering a tornado out in Suffolk years back. Okay, it hit part of Suffolk, tore up around the Obacy area, one of the kind of hospital branches out there. I remember seeing a pickup truck into the side of the building, kind of picked up and stuck into the side of the building. There was a car hanging from a rafter inside a strip shopping mall. It's pretty amazing, the devastation to this strip mall out there in Suffolk. That was a similar type of tornado, EF2, borderline EF3. So you have the potential for these types of tornadoes, especially across central Virginia, but here in Hampton Roads as well. We have to be ready, and that's what we're really driving home. Then you look at the strong wind potential, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Guess what? There are 5 categories, 5 potential risk areas, and we've reached the highest levels across the western parts of the 13 News Now viewing area, central Virginia, central North Carolina. This, again, setup is no joke. I've been working here for the most part since 1997. I spent 3 years back in the Midwest in St. Louis at KSDK, our sister station. And in all of my time since 1997, I mean, this is some of the most ominous severe weather potential that I've seen. So we really are just driving home, folks. We have multiple ways to get the information out if there are warnings, if these storms reach their full potential. And these graphics, we're not just making this stuff up. We're sharing with you from the Storm Prediction Center what the outlooks are. So this is what the Storm Prediction Center from Norman, Oklahoma, part of NOAA and the National Weather Service, this is what they've got out for our outlook. And this is about as rough as it really gets here. Obviously, we've been hit with hurricanes, and there have been some tropical storms that have come through and done a lot. But the potential is there for some significant storminess across the region. And again, that hashed area, not just that 60-mile-per-hour threshold that we issue severe thunderstorm warnings on for wind, but in this case, we could see some wind gusts excess of 75 miles per hour. And remember, hurricane force winds 74 miles per hour or greater. So we're talking hurricane force gusts with some of these storms. And this is just outflow, not even counting the tornado potential. This area here, very likely to see damaging winds. That's why Dominion Energy is so prepared to deal with this. Now, been talking a lot about these threats. Tornado threat, tremendous. The wind threat, very, very high, almost a certainty across central Virginia into our area. But here's one bit of good news. The hail threat is fairly low. So while we deal with the wind and the tornadoes potentially, at least the threat for hail is not quite as great. Doesn't mean we won't see anything. We could see some, but that's just not as great a threat. Now, as we are bracing for this, we're not the only ones, and we're going to take kind of a step back and look at this massive storm system as it's sweeping across the eastern U.S. It is unleashing severe weather with damaging winds, and then, as I showed you earlier, heavy snow. The storm's snowy side packed the most significant punch early Sunday for millions in the north central U.S., but through Monday, more than 100 million people in the eastern half of the country are now facing this significant threat of severe thunderstorms and tornadoes. Reed Binion reports.
Just trying to keep up with the snow and coming out every couple hours to keep up on it.
The Midwest and Great Lakes slammed with heavy snow over the weekend.
I couldn't see because my glasses had all filled with ice and snow.
More than a foot of snow buried parts of central Wisconsin and southern Minnesota by Sunday morning.
We did have probably 3 to 4 snowplows slide off the road.
On top of extremely heavy snowfall hitting millions in the north central U.S., powerful winds whipping it up to create dangerous whiteouts in some areas.
We actually ended up lost because we couldn't see one of the road signs.
The punishing winter weather making for extremely hazardous driving conditions.
It's terrible. I would absolutely not be out driving if I didn't have to be. If you don't have a 4x4, I wouldn't leave at all.
Strong winds creating hazardous road conditions much farther south as well. Video out of Texas showing multiple vehicles wrecked, including a pickup truck crashed under a semi after strong winds whipped up dust, leading to what the National Weather Service warned would be near zero visibility. While blizzard warnings continue into Monday for some in the Midwest, the severe weather is also pushing east, with millions of people facing an increasingly severe thunderstorm and tornado risk. I'm Reed Binion reporting.
All right, so we do have this massive storm system producing so much crazy weather across the country, and this is going to be coming in. We're going to talk to you about what you need to do in terms of understanding the threats to your area with the tornado coming and what to do if you're caught outside. But first, we're going to take a short break. We'll take a 2-minute break, and we'll have a lot more from the weather desk right after this. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. You know, I was thinking about this. We were talking about EF2, the threat of that, and how that's a little more powerful of a storm. But you hear us talk about EF0s, EF1s, 2s, 3s, this whole scale. And when we do that, you might be wondering what exactly this means in terms of the strength and how these things rank in severity with the tornadoes. Meteorologist Evan Stewart has the explanation.
Between 2007 and 2025, the United States has experienced thousands of tornadoes varying in intensity as classified by the Enhanced Fujita or EF scale. The Enhanced Fujita scale was implemented in 2007 and categorizes tornadoes from EF0, the weakest, all the way to an EF5, the strongest. Now, these wind speeds are estimates based on damage surveys conducted by the National Weather Service. And since 2007, over half of all tornadoes were classified as EF0. About 51.5% of all tornadoes had wind speeds between 66 and 85 miles per hour. These tornadoes tend to be weaker, doing light damage. Over a third of all tornadoes were classified as EF1 with wind speeds between 86 and 110 miles per hour. These tornadoes tend to do moderate damage, stripping roofs, overturning mobile homes, and breaking windows. Now, tornadoes rated EF2 and EF3, they're considered strong with wind speeds ranging from 111 to 165 miles per hour, and they accounted for about 11% of all tornadoes. Now, these storms can cause significant damage to structures and pose considerable risk to life and property. Now, the most violent tornadoes rated EF4 and EF5 with wind speeds exceeding 166 miles per hour are rare, comprising less than 1% of all tornadoes. Now, despite their rarity, these tornadoes are responsible for a disproportionate number of tornado-related fatalities. According to records, of all tornado deaths, 70% come from EF4 and EF5 tornadoes.
It's pretty wild when you see those numbers. So we're getting into that rare area in terms of the potential for the stronger tornadoes. We're going to be watching for that. Now, something else you see behind me, I mentioned we've got this tornado watch until 2 o'clock, and that's for the central portions of North Carolina and Virginia here, parts of the Piedmont through Raleigh and areas out well to the west of our area, but that's through 2 o'clock. Later this afternoon, I would say mid to late afternoon through early evening, we're going to have another tornado watch here. In addition to the watches, you see the warnings. So you see these watches and warnings, you may be wondering what the distinctions are between a tornado watch and a tornado warning. Well, our colleague, meteorologist Taylor Stephenson, explains that.
During severe weather days, a lot of weather terminology can be thrown at you all at once. A common mistake is mixing up a watch versus a warning. Let's talk about the difference between a tornado watch and a tornado warning and another type of tornado alert in the same family. A watch means that conditions are favorable for tornadoes to form. A tornado watch usually covers a large area and can last for hours. Under a watch, this is your time to get prepared for inclement weather. A warning means that the threat for the tornado is imminent. The rotation was either indicated by radar or confirmed by someone on the ground in that area. During a tornado warning, you need to seek shelter immediately. The best places to stay safe during a tornado warning are a basement, an interior room without windows, or a tornado shelter. A warning box is much smaller than a watch box and typically lasts for about 30 minutes. The third type of alert is rare, but when a tornado emergency is issued, there's a severe threat to human life with catastrophic damage expected. For 13 News Now, I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson.
And you just heard Taylor say if where you live or work falls under a tornado warning, that means it's time to act. And if you're indoors, go into a basement or the lowest floor possible. Then go into the smallest center room you can find. If you can't find one, seek shelter in an interior stairwell. It's important to stay away from windows and cover yourself. If you're out and about when it comes to warnings, come trying to seek shelter inside immediately. If that's not possible, get away from any trees and cars, lie face down and low on the ground, and cover your head.
All right, so some important things here. Obviously, the idea, go low, get to the lowest level, and put as many walls between yourself as you can. And the outside, it seems pretty simple, but this is really important.
It really is. I mean, it just is so important because, especially when you don't have tornado warnings super often, it's always important to be reminded what you want to do. And sometimes it could be a little bit panicky because you don't really know what to do. So that's why we kind of keep saying over and over what to do. But one thing you also want to keep in mind is that if you're out on the roadways and you're on the highway and there's a tornado warning, you don't want to get under the overpass.
Right, very important. We were talking about this earlier. So if you are, and honestly, the National Weather Service and the Red Cross, all the folks who put out these safety things, they kind of rethought? That's what rethunk. They reconsidered the recommendations here, and we were actually talking about this earlier. It used to be if there was a tornado warning and you were in a car, get out of the car, get down to the ditch, do all that stuff. If there is a clear path that you can get to a shelter, get to the shelter, okay, in a car. If you are driving and you see this tornado or there's a tornado warning and the tornado is moving one way and you've got a clear path, maybe perpendicular or getting away from it, keep on trucking, get away, put as much space as you can between yourself and that tornado. Where folks get into trouble, Hunter, especially back, there's a lot of this kind of documented with storm chasers. They would try to maybe gun it and outrun. Those tornadoes, they don't have to pay attention to street signs or roadways or anything else. And they can kind of lift and touch and go, so they can cover a lot more ground quickly. That's why for the longest time, it was never try to outrun a tornado. Now, if there is a clear and safe way to get away from it, they're saying do that. If you are caught in your car, okay, now the way they've built all of this safety around these cars, the advice is leave your seatbelt on, duck your head down. This is if debris is flying around and starting to hit your car, get your head down below the level of the windshield and the windows, try to cover your head. Hopefully, it's never a good idea to be in a car. I mean, you don't want to be caught. But if debris is starting to hit the car, you're going to put yourself in more harm trying to get out and run around or do something like that. So the idea is get down below the level of the windows. And then finally, if you have time, it's coming quickly, but that debris hasn't gotten to the car yet. If there is a low-lying area that's noticeably lower than the elevation of the car, and you can get away into that low-lying area, you can give yourself a chance there as well. Cross your legs, cross your fingers, put it behind your head, and lay down on your stomach in the lowest area you can. Hopefully that debris misses you. It's going to be worse up a little bit. Scary stuff if you're caught outside. Yeah, but that's, the main reason why we have these watches issued is because it kind of gives you time to make a plan. Yeah. You don't have to, go into your safe spot when there's a tornado watch. It just gives you an idea of what you could do and what you can do once that warning is issued.
Yeah,
so,
if you're out traveling, you could be like, oh, I'm going this way. This exit here, would take me to this safe spot. If a tornado warning was issued at that time. And again, talk to your family about this. A watch just simply means basically you've got all the ingredients there. You don't have a cake. You might have, flour and sugar and icing and eggs and all that stuff. But it doesn't mean that you have a cake yet. You just have all the ingredients there. That's a watch. If somebody bakes that cake and you pull it out of the oven and you've got a cake, that's a warning saying, hey, it's actually happened, it's come together, and that's when you have to take action immediately. You bring up a great point. We've got so many different ways to alert people to the threats. That's why we're doing this here on our live streams on 13 News Now Plus. And I'll remind you again, we will have more coverage throughout the day. So have your mobile devices charged and ready to go. Keep checking back. Access the radars. There'll be push alerts for weather situations that come up later today and into the evening as well. So we've got a lot here to share with you, and it's all there at your fingertips, but you have to be ready to go. And if you haven't already downloaded the 13 News Now mobile app, you should do that because it's a tremendous resource. It is absolutely free. Hunter, it's as easy as going to the App Store or Google Play. We also have a QR code. You can just scan that QR code and you can get that mobile app downloaded for free. And you will get
weather updates, you'll get traffic updates, you'll get news alerts as well, and you'll have access to all of our radars and special weather coverage. So a lot available when you just download that mobile app and take it with you on the go. All right, we're going to take a short break. Again, another 2-minute break, but coming back, we've got a lot more. And we're going to talk about a few really fascinating national stories. You don't want to miss that. And we'll have more on our developing severe weather for later this afternoon. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller, and look at this map behind me here. We've got the potential for significant travel delays across parts of the country. Let's take this map full for just a moment, then we're going to hear from one of my colleagues. I wanted to show you, we've got various conditions that we're looking at. Let me click on snow and show you the areas around the Great Lakes. You can see Michigan, both the upper peninsula and lower peninsulas of Michigan there under that impact, major impacts from a lot of snow. That's up around Green Bay as well. You get down to Chicago, and they've got the potential for some snow there. Also, we have wind impacts there as well. Major along Lake Michigan. It becomes more minor to moderate as you come farther to the south. So far, it hasn't been too bad for us as we look at the conditions through midday, but we've got the potential for storms here and potential for wind issues with the tornadoes developing up and down the southeast U.S. You can see back through Florida and Georgia into coastal sections of Virginia and North Carolina, and then it runs up through the northeast. So that has us wondering, what about flight conditions, and are there any delays out there? Jordy Clark, I know you've been watching that this morning. In addition to our local traffic, we're still doing okay right now in terms of wet weather, but how's that travel looking?
Yeah, certainly. I will say the roads were nice and clear this morning, which was a change of pace, but a lot of it was because of all those school closures. So kind of a good news if you do have to be out today, especially for work. But as for those flights, they have started to pile up just a bit throughout the morning. Now, we are starting to see some delays and some cancellations, especially to a few of those hotspots that Craig had mentioned. Now, Philadelphia, 8:45 a.m., the departure delayed. We've got a few delays earlier. Say maybe 4 delays and 4 cancellations, and that has since increased. And taking a look at more of those, we have a few that are already in the air because, again, those storms kind of coming in later throughout the day will certainly play a role. But looking looking like we've got delays departing from Philadelphia, New York, and this is again at Norfolk International Airport, just for anyone who might be headed out today. Atlanta, Georgia, I know we mentioned Georgia, that has seen some delays as well. A cancellation going to New York, of course, so certainly being mindful as you are planning for your day. And as we've always been told when we talk to the airport, you should check on your flight before you even get to the airport. That is because they are in real time when they are canceling and delaying. A few of these delays seem to be, I want to say, about 30 minutes, some to an hour that I've seen throughout the airport, depending on, again, where you're going. New York, of course, like I mentioned, Atlanta, Georgia, again, the later flights definitely seem to see more of those cancellations because that's when I think the bulk of the storm that we've been mentioning throughout the morning is really going to take a hit. So again, being mindful of that and even looking up here at some arrivals, if we can get that over there. Oh, there we go. Let's work with these graphics this morning. Yes, so some arrivals, of course, for the most part have seen, but we're seeing some more delays again coming down from north to here to Norfolk, Atlanta, Georgia. Again, those hot spots like we had mentioned. So if you have any flights to or from coming in, definitely check on your family members as well. But before you walk out that door, before you hit the road, it is just important to make sure you are checking your phone, checking for those delays and cancellations, because a day like today, better to be safe than sorry. So, Craig, I know you're going to definitely help as we continue throughout the morning because, you know, it could look a lot different a few hours from now, even on the roads later, because I will also be tracking that for the noon show, too, because, again, those roads could get dicey, and we know what happens in Hampton Roads when those roads get wet.